Think of the word involvement. Think of all that's contained in that single word. Involved with your own life in so many ways, right? Think of all the mental involvement you have, both inside yourself and directed out toward the world. All the thousands of things that you think about all day long. Think about your own involvement with your surging and very often raging, right? Very often raging emotions. Like a flood that come over you. You're very much involved with your sensations and feelings, are you not? Look at the outer involvements too. With where you work, with the people you live with the conflicts, with the wishes you have that somehow that world out there wouldn't be so fierce to you. That you could be fully involved in this life without being so punished. Let me give you something to think about right now. Does it ever occur to you that the reason you're not getting along with yourself or with that society out there is because of your wrong involvements, and you are the cause of everything that starts within you that eventually goes out into the world, which are your involvements. I'm talking about you being a cause. You know what a cause is? An original force. Something that starts something. That goes out somewhere and causes a result somewhere, a consequence somewhere. Think of yourself then as being wrongly involved with the world because you started something wrong in the first place and you received back what you started. That's an old principle. Have you ever looked at it closely? Let's go into it very simply. You want to know why you get what you get? You get what you get because you give what you give. But you don't want to look too closely at that, do you? Because you have what is called beautiful paintings about yourself, which are all nonsense, of course, which are beautiful daydreams in which you project those out into the world and you wonder why the world doesn't give you back in kind. You say you're kindly and you're loving and you're gentle to people out there and you can't understand why they're so hostile. You know, I've told you many times, and I think it'd be a good idea to repeat it, that if the whole world out there, all 4 billion people and all the events of life, if all 4 billion people and 50 billion events surrounded you and clawed at you and roared at you, if you were a right person, you wouldn't feel a thing. There must be something wrong inside the individual mind that is looking out at that world and fearing it. And do you know, by the way, when you fear something and people know that you fear them, that's the invitation to the attack? Don't you know that your face is an invitation? Don't you know your hesitation, your lack of real strength is an invitation for the world to look at you and say, I wonder if she's ready to be taken. I wonder if he's ready to be attacked. You're the cause of all your problems, of all your difficulties, of all your sorrows. I'm talking about you individually. And this is what we can call, in a general word, our involvements toward life. Now, take a little closer look at your involvements with yourself. Look at all the secret, concealed emotions that you have, which immediately you feel them, you try to justify them and say they're okay because you've identified with them and you've taken them as being you, and because you can't bear to think that you, darling, you might be wrong, you okay everything that goes on inside of you, all the angers and all the paranoid suspicions, you okay them because you're afraid to make the simple statement, the simple admission, I am wrong. Now this is what is keeping you with a wrong involvement with the world out there, because if you were right inside, there would be just one world, and it would be a right world. If you were true, a true human being, true man, true woman, what would you, if you were true, listen to this, if you were fulfilled, if you were whole, if you were fully healed inside, what desperations would you have inside you that would cause a wrong involvement? There'd be no desperations at all, therefore no need to go out and seek. What are you seeking from the world? Why don't you think about that while I'm talking a little bit? What are you seeking out there, shall I tell you? Approval, someone to like you. We'll get to that a little bit later. For now, why are you looking to the outer world for anything at all? Look, do you understand that you don't have anything valuable inside of you? Why do you think the other person has anything to give you? Why do you attribute virtue and strength and kindness and love to other people when you know yourself you have none at all? Ah, but you don't know that. You don't want to know that. You want to idealize your own system and say you're all right, you're fine, you're kindly, you're considerate. And so you project that phoniness out into the world and you say that man is as gentle as I am. And about what, ladies? 3 weeks of marriage. You wonder how you could have made such a dreadful mistake, how you could have been so stupid. You could have avoided it had you known you were stupid 3 weeks earlier. Couldn't you? You could have. How many of you have been dragged into involvements by your own neurosis, by your own mad desires, and later on you wondered about your intelligence? Well, you were right about it. You didn't have much. We can take a single word right now and describe why our involvements with ourselves and with the exterior world are all wrong. And I want you to examine this word with me as we go through it. I want you to try to do a little in-depth work with it, and I'll supply the beginning ideas on it. Why does everything go wrong? Why can't I get what I want? I asked you earlier, why do you want that to begin with? All this agitation, all this confusion is caused, really, essentially, you can track it down to one thing. And that one thing is unconsciousness. Now, let's look at the word first of all before we go on. To be unconscious, look at it physically. If you're physically unconscious, lying down somewhere, you bumped your head or something. If you're unconscious, you don't know what's going on around you, correct? Furthermore, you don't know what's going on inside of you. You can't look at yourself and say, I'm unconscious. The whole thing is blocked out, isn't it? So to be unconscious simply means you don't know what's going on. Have I described your life? Are you not unconscious men and women who doesn't understand anything at all and wondering what you're doing here on earth? So, unconscious means to not see. Now, if you can't see, you can't comprehend. If you can't comprehend, you can't be free. Now, here is the main difficulty. Listen carefully to this. A human being who is unconscious, unaware, who cannot see, he doesn't know that he can't see. How can he? If you're unconscious, you don't know you're unconscious. We were talking about physically a moment ago. You go up to a man and say you're unconscious, he can't answer you and say, yes, that's correct, because he can't even hear you talk. 4 billion human beings are unconscious. Truth tries to get through to them, something higher tries to get through to them, and they can't hear. What do you suppose you are going to have to do about the state in which you are your own worst enemy Because you're not only asleep spiritually, but you don't know you are. I have given you the answer to it, and I'm going to say it this time in a little different way. With very careful self-seeing, minute by minute, day by day, year by year, you can see that you're a totally lost human being. Now that is the beginning of breaking your unconscious state. If you could just look and look at yourself physically even and say, now I was driving down the street and I saw an accident out there and I saw my hands clench in nervousness. I was appalled at what I saw. One little sight out into that world took you away from yourself. It stole your attention, stole your energy, and you didn't know what happened for all these years until you obeyed the rule. Look and see what happens to you as a result of being involved in that world out there. Can you notice yourself blinking nervously when someone slanders you? Can you notice yourself not even able to walk a straight line hardly sometimes because you're sobbing inwardly, hysterically over something because something bad happened to you or you heard some bad news of some kind? Having caught the first glimpse that you're what is known as a sleeping human being, having noticed how nervous you are, how anyone can take away your so-called confidence, having seen that a little bit, you can go on to the next step, and every step is of tremendous importance. We could mark it out with 10 separate steps if we wanted to, starting from the fact that people know nothing at all of what they're doing here on earth, and they begin to question it. All the 10 steps. Here's the next one. When you see yourself not in command of yourself, what's your next reaction? I'm saying, now look, I'm saying you're beginning to notice what you're doing. Put it as simply as that. You notice what you're doing. You're crying. You're getting mad. You're stubborn. You're foolish. You're stupid. On and on and on. If you go this far, I want you to know you're a miracle already. Beginning to be a miracle that'll change your life astonishingly. If you go this far where you can know, I was about to flare up at that man when he said that, but I noticed that I was. All right, let's say you've even gone this far, and don't think you have, any of you here. Don't any of you please think that you understand anything that I'm talking about, because you don't. Now, what was your reaction to that? You were angry because you have a false image that you do understand yourself in life. Why do you lie? Well, you lie because that's been the habit all your life. And that's the easy way out, the cowardly way out. Just lie about something. Lie, 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 and destroy yourself eventually. But let's say that you have, after many years of hard work of studying what you've heard just so far now, hard study of it, you finally understand that you are indeed in the grip of something very wild. And that savagery is called your inner nature. It's got you. It controls you. It can do anything it wants with you. It can make you want to get up and walk out of a truth meeting. You're so agitated. You're so afraid you feel under attack. May heaven help the man or woman who gets up and walks out when he feels attacked by truth. When you go out, you're going to go right back into your own darkness, and that is the real attack. See, you have attached the word attack to truth. Your egotism did, your vanity did, and said, I'm being attacked by truth. What you're doing is resisting truth and calling it an attack. And you go out, and you get attacked by your own nature. That is a real attack, which shows that you're a very foolish human being. Having sensed that there's something wild and vicious inside of you that doesn't care about anything or anyone except destruction, including your own destruction. Having noticed that, You can then go on to another extremely important stage. You're not out of the woods yet. You're not out of the jungle by a long ways yet. You're still living with all the tigers and lions and wolves inside of you. Aren't you? Nod your head. Aren't you? Of course you are. Well, you can't lie to me. Of course you are. Nod your head. Having understood that, you're going to have to go through a lot of conscious, agonizing pain in order to break down the thought, I break down and dissipate, push away. Eventually you're going to have to push away the thought, I am that tiger. I am that savagery. I am that rude person, or whatever other insult you put on yourself. You see, every human being, including you, thinks he needs to have an identity. He needs to say definitely, look, sir, look, world, this is what I am. I am, one person will say, I'm a spiritual student, and I just love to go places where they talk about truth. Another person will go to the very opposite and say, don't you give me that stuff. I went through that as a kid in Sunday school. Don't give me that stuff. I know what life is all about. Life is all about grabbing. Life is all about grabbing and running as fast as you can and getting it. You see, no one would ever say that out like that because people are such hypocrites. They hide the thoughts such as that go through them and pursue them, by the way, all the time. They keep them hidden because they want to present a pretty picture to the world, because there are certain rewards from the world in being a hypocrite. The world will reward hypocrisy as long as it calls itself something else. As long as you call yourself a strong leader or something like that, you will indeed be rewarded. And that's the end of your rewards. You'll be rewarded. You could be rewarded as much as 50, 60, 90 years even. You could be praised by society, by your spouse, and you can be praised by yourself for a long time too. And have you ever noticed how hard it is to keep it up sometimes? How you have to keep reminding yourself how great you are, how honest you are, how enlightened you are. Have you ever noticed how hard it is? Have you ever noticed how it sends you to bed exhausted? And how you hope the alarm doesn't go off so you can get another half hour in the morning or something like that. Now here is the finality of this particular phase. There is a state, ladies and gentlemen, which I will define in several ways as follows. There is a state in which you live from a spirit, a free spirit inside of you. There is a state in which you are truly spiritual, truly have higher principles inside you that are living through you. There is a state in which you care nothing for the rewards of this world. There is a state in which you are not hammering at yourself, nagging at yourself, hitting yourself, criticizing yourself all day long, as you now do. You are free of all negative activity. And in its place is let's call it a flow of light, a flood of light, in which your entire day is lived in real happiness, which is freedom, which is absence of wrong involvement, in which you go through your day knowing where you are, knowing what you're doing, knowing what you say when you talk to other people. And this state can be so advanced that nothing from that outer world or from your inner world can make you nervous, can upset you, can make you cry, can do anything harmful to you at all. Now, what is the basis of this state of inner liberation? It is a state in which you don't know who you are by thinking about it. in which you know absolutely that you have nothing to do. You have nothing more to do because there is no one inside of you to do it. It is all done. You're set free. You just live freely and sanely and decently and kindly because you have no enemies at all anymore. Come on, do a little work. How many times did you fight today? How many mental scenes went through your mind in which you pictured someone with whom you were fighting? Right? How many times today? Or are you so asleep, so unconscious, so wrongly involved with yourself that you have no idea what I'm talking about? Because you've never done it. You've never had the marvelous experience of seeing yourself engaging in a mental movie arguing with someone. I tell you, one day, if you keep coming back to these things, one bright day I'll tell you exactly what will happen to you. Oh, what a marvelous morning that will be. When you, in your nervousness and your fear and your anxiety, suddenly start churning inside and start unreeling the mental movie of you arguing or loving someone, which is just as phony. And because you don't want to be wrongly involved in your life, in your own life, all of a sudden you catch yourself right in the middle of telling that boss off, of yelling at that girlfriend who offended you. You catch yourself right in the middle of it, and it occurs to you in a flash of light. It occurs to you where you have been, and you call yourself back home. At that split second, the mental movie breaks. You know that you were walking down the street, or you know you were approaching the cafe. You know exactly what you are doing now because you're no longer lost in your own mind. You're no longer wandering around creating these scenes. Now listen, hang on. We've just begun. So you're walking down the street and you catch that, and in great wonderment at what happened to you, and you said, for 20 years I heard about that. I wrote about it. I thought about it. And this is for the first time in 20 years that I actually experienced it. And at last, after 20 years, I know what was being talked about. It happened to me. You know why that happened? Because 18 years ago, you made up your mind that you didn't want to be a hypocrite anymore. You made up your mind you didn't want to be a little sour neurotic, causing grief to other people, which means you had no conscience, which means you were an animal. You were an animal walking around behaving like a human being. You didn't kid yourself, did you? You know why? Because you clawed at yourself, didn't you, 18 years ago? But you made up your mind that you were tired of being an animal. You wanted to be a human being. So you begin to think about these things. And now look, you caught the first time when you're walking down the street. And you said, I've got it, I'm free. Oh, no, you're not. See how clever the dark forces are? You made a small little breakthrough. Now you go home, and 3 hours later, you catch yourself doing the same thing. 8 hours later, you catch yourself doing the same thing. 15 hours later, you catch yourself doing the same thing. You catch and break, catch and break, catch and break, catch and break. Till finally you don't catch yourself anymore and don't break yourself anymore because you don't live in that haunted house anymore. You have done it 100 times, 1,000 times, and you know for sure what you were like those years ago. And you know for sure, listen to this, you know for sure you don't want to go back. Isn't it a tragedy that people go around asking other people, how am I? That's a wrong involvement. Don't you do that? Aren't you asking people, please tell me that I'm okay, that I'm all right? Of course you do. That's why you go where you go and do what you do. You can stop all that wrong involvement. You can stay home with yourself. You won't have to fawn before anyone like you now do. You won't have to put on those phony smiles that you now do. You won't be a desperate human being like you now are. Look, why don't you take all this very seriously right now? I've described you, you know that. Why don't you be honest for a change instead of lying as you always do? Why don't you be honest for a change and say, that is right, show me more. Something will happen to you. You'll change inwardly. Wouldn't that be nice?